personal views and opinions expressed by our podcast guests are their own and are not legal advice or official statements by their organizations. Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. This is the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, where we discuss data privacy issues with industry leaders around the world with information the businesses need to know right now. I have a very special guest on the show, all the way from Turkey, Melih Calikoglu, and I'm really happy to have him on the show. He's a data privacy professional and lawyer who works independently in the data privacy and data protection area. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for hosting me, Debbie. It's a great pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was so interested in you and your background and what you're doing in Turkey. I know I like to have people on the show who are from other regions of the world. I know a lot of times people in data protection, we seem like we talk a lot about EU, we talk a lot about the US, but data protection and data privacy are occurring all over the world. So if you can, I would love for you to tell me about your career journey and how you got interested in privacy.
Well, I have a long story of professional journey, actually. Yes, I most of the time in my career, I worked as a government officer in various positions and organizations, quite varied, actually. Almost 18 years, I suppose. I decided that I should change my track and go on my own way. And that was a time when a new data privacy law was introduced in Turkey. It was a treasure trove for me because I always loved uncover how the society works, the relations between people and organizations, and also to understand the technology and implementing. So data privacy was a convergence for me, and it was great, actually. The most things that I love in my professional life come and join together. So since then, around 2017, I began as a lawyer at the same time to consult companies and organizations in Turkey to comply with the new data privacy law. Very short.
Very good. Well, you told me a story before we recorded that I was not aware of, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. So, as you said, Turkey had not had governing bodies around privacy or privacy laws until 2016. But tell me how that's different from what's happening in maybe the US or what's happening in the EU right now.
The story goes back to the candidacy of Turkey to the European Union. Since 2004, Turkey is a candidate country to the European Union. So it is supposed to accept the acquis communautaire, the European law, and introduce it into its legal system. And in 2010, there was a constitutional change about the rights of privacy. And this is when the first sentence about talking about right to privacy in the Turkish legal system was introduced, but didn't actually took action until 6 years later in 2016. So that was when the country accepted a new law in line with the data accession talks with the European Union. And since then, we now have a personal protection law of Turkey and the legal system and the governing body. And it all started actually in 2016. So for Turkey, it's quite a new subject, actually. So before that developments, there were almost nothing beside the general legal issues that you can rely on relating to privacy. But for specifically, yes, it's a brand new thing.
That's exciting. Tell me a little bit about maybe some nuances or differences in Turkish privacy laws that are a bit different maybe than people would expect.
All privacy laws are not equal. They have similarities but differences. But with the story of Turkey, since Turkey is actually range of the European Union still, so its law is expected to be in line with the European Union law when it was released. But there were problems actually in my professional view in this time that I saw it. So actually the Turkish data privacy law was similar to the European Union's the previous regulation, the Privacy Directive in 1995. In terms of alignment with the GDPR, it lacks some parts and it lacks some details and the new technology and the new approaches to data privacy. So we have problems. For example, transfer of data to third countries is a problematic article in the Turkish data law, wrongfully structured, I may say. But since the country is within the range of the European Union, the governing body is relying on GDPR actually when it's making decisions because there are gaps for current and modern developments and cases. So it somehow has to rely on GDPR for this up-to-date problems and solutions. It's a mixture of these actually. So everybody is learning data privacy quite recently. The governing bodies, the judiciary system, the lawyers, and everybody. So it's interesting. It was like Wild West at the beginning. Now it's settling down actually. And I think there may be some amendments to the law to make it much more in line with the GDPR. Since every year, Turkey, the European Union publishes a report on the ongoing process of the accession talks, and it specifically mentions that Turkish privacy law should be more aligned with the GDPR, and it's promoting this idea. And I think in time it will get more in line with the European Union law. So it's an ongoing process currently.
Yeah. So does the Turkish law have fines and penalties like the GDPR?
Yeah. There's a governing body, KVKK, they call it, Personal Data Protection Board. And there are fines and in the law, and they are actively implementing these fines, just like in the European Union. Differences in details, actually, but in general, yeah, the system is working, and there's a quite hype, actually, about getting in compliance with the new law. So it took some time, but yeah, after 7 years, now it's settling, and now everybody knows about that they have to comply with the new law. It's a bustling scene, actually.
That's exciting to see all the changes and the different jurisdictions. I think GDPR has been very influential, even in places like the US, where we don't yet have privacy or data protection laws in the same way. But I think the GDPR has been really influential. But it's interesting that you say that Turkish law is more modeled after the Data Directive of 1995, because a lot of jurisdictions that passed privacy laws, data protection laws between 1995 and 2016 borrow very liberally from that. So I always tell people you should go back and read the directive because a lot of those countries, like the Philippines, for example, very similar, where their laws came into effect around that time. So for some of those countries that either started their journey before GDPR came out, they are very similar to the data directive. So I think that's really interesting.
Time jump because when the data directive was published, it was the age of emails.
Right.
A lot changed. It's incredibly different environment now we have regarding data processing, data transfers, and data sharing, and all anything about privacy actually on the digital world. But the Turkish example might be yes, as you said, because it was began to be prepared before they should naturally look for the existing regulation, which was the data directive at the time. So, but in time, it's going to get more aligned with the GDPR. This is unavoidable, I suppose, because the GDPR is a quite extensive and influential regulation when it comes to privacy.
I agree. So I want your thoughts on working with small and medium-sized businesses. I know a lot of times when we think of big business in the US, for example, like 90+% of businesses are small and medium-sized businesses. So not everyone is Apple, not everyone is Microsoft, but there are challenges for these small and medium-sized businesses to understand and comply with data privacy and data protection laws. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing in your work around the challenges of small and medium-sized businesses to embrace what these laws mean and actually change the way that they operate as an organization as it relates to privacy?
Well, yeah, lots of changes, differences actually. Thinking about the bigger organizations, it's the capacity actually first. These organizations do not have the resources and the capacity, not financially and not on the employment level. So the problem is much bigger for them at a much bigger ratio of a cost for them. So, and this causes risk aversion actually. So think about that. Most of them cannot have a constant legal support and make contract with lawyers actually to receive constant legal support for the smaller ones. So talking about them about compliance is a very big fuss actually. First, they don't understand what it is about, and they don't understand how it is related to their daily businesses. So it's a completely new thing. The guy is producing, for example, handheld devices or simple plastic objects, actually. Since he has employees, so he has to comply with the data privacy law, talking in a different language, actually, for them. They don't get it. And it's costful and it's hard to implement because the administrative and technical measures are not for the faint-hearted, actually. Although the laws, the regulations talk about this, they say enough, what you call technical measures, not enough. The word is not enough.
I think it's like administrative and technical measures.
It takes care of the size of the company. Yeah, the laws thinks about it because still it's quite a fuss for the small and medium organization. And what this causes is risk aversion. So what do? They just copy similar text from a similar company. That's what they do actually. But since compliance is a much more complicated thing actually, it has to be tailor-made to protect the organization from data privacy risks, let's say. Although the law talks about protection of the person, the rights of the person, but there is the interest of the company, the data controller at the same. It also has to protect itself from these data privacy risks. And in order to do that, the tools that you produce for them has to be tailor-made to take into consideration what they are doing, how they are processing the data, which tools they are using, who they are sharing the data with, and comprehensive data mapping first you have to make to understand this. So this is quite a lot of work actually. When generally I finish with 200 pages of documents, when they see it, they are generally shocked. And just they say that how are we going to apply this? Because there are contracts, data transfer contracts and the agreements, the policies. Most of the companies never solve policies in their life section. They do business naturally.
Right.
So when you talk about information security policy and bring your own device policy, it gets more complicated. So I think European Union is aware of the subject. In one of their latest regulations about data, they talk about this imbalance between big organizations and small organizations, but still it's a great problem. For example, now we are carrying out a European Union project, an Erasmus project in Germany and in Turkey, and it's about creating a training tool for the accommodation sector employees to be more easy to comply with the law. We'll end up producing some video content for that can access freely on the project website. But most of the organizations, the hotels, just don't want to talk about the subject actually. And we go to them and we have prepared surveys and other things, averting the risks actually. And we had real problem to collect data from them in that matter. They are somehow secretive about this. If they are complying with it or not, they don't want to discuss about it. And what they do is just most of them, I'm not talking about the accommodation sector, but the small and medium size, they just copy similar text and paraphrase similar documents, just changing the names. What this creates is actually the question, are we really protecting privacy in this manner? Because as you said, Germany is also, and Turkey, most of the organizations who are processing personal data is small and medium-sized organizations. And there are other problems. For example, data transfer agreements, for example. I am a small company. I'm selling cars, actually, let's say, in a small city. And I am using Google Drive and other Google products, and I'm sending Google a data transfer agreement, for example. Do you think Google will ever reply to me and say, okay, now we have data transfer agreement coming from this little company that we have 5 million or 10 million similar companies. So it's also practically sometimes blocked by the real life situations, actually. So ideally, yes, we have to create data transfer agreements. We have to sign with all the parties that we are sharing our data. But in reality, it's different, actually. And most of these organizations cannot access to bigger companies, even ask them. So there are hierarchy between businesses, actually. So, for example, I was working with an insurance company, insurance agent. I was working for the compliance project of them, and they work with bigger insurance companies. And these bigger insurance companies have already prepared their data transfer agreements and sent to these agents, brokers. So the thing is, hierarchically, the insurance companies are top level, and these agents are on the bottom level. So but the agreements were false, actually. And this is a problem for Turkey or countries who are adopting the privacy laws in recent times. We have roles in the privacy regulations: data controller, data subject, data processor, sub-processor, joint controller. And it has different meanings and it has different obligations for them to follow. So it has different roles, outcomes, different results. And if you define this wrongfully, for example, if you say to a data controller that you are a processor and send the data transfer agreement in accordingly, it's a problem. It is a contract that is inapplicable, actually, in real life, because you cannot judge over the regulation, what the regulations defines it. And here, again, you see the small and medium-sized organizations' problems. Do they have the power to discuss how the agreement will be arranged, or the details, or other things? So this hierarchy is also a real problem. So, yeah, I think even if GDPR is a great example of crusading for data privacy rights for individuals, we have to take care also for the real life businesses and their problems. Yeah, I am facing this daily. The difference of our jobs from a dedicated data protection officer is that they are generally in bigger companies because they have the resources to hire a data protection officer. And from our perspective, we work with every size of organizations, every type of organization. So we see many different problems and many different situations, and we have to solve. For example, I am working on a company who is trying to sell a software to a European country and is trying to get in compliance with the local law there, the European Union law, and they use artificial intelligence. Oh, God. Now we have to completely rethink how the data will be processed using artificial intelligence, the data flow charts that we have to create, we have to define responsibilities, etc. So it's not an easy thing, actually. Another difference from us and the data protection officers are generally, not generally, always, are the ones who apply the solutions that they have produced. If there's a policy, he is the one who is going to, or she is the one who is going to follow if it is applied within the company or not. But we are consultants, actually. So we prepare all the documents, we tailor-made just for the company. So it solves many of them, their problems. But if it is not applied, if it stays in a dossier, it is meaningless. It doesn't protect anything, actually. These are real problems. And thinking about the percentage of small and medium-sized companies in our economies, it's a huge problem, actually.
I love what you said just there, and that is so true. So I tell people compliance is not getting a document and putting it, as you say, in a dossier. It is about the action and activity and who's responsible and who's accountable. And as you say, within larger organizations, you have people who wear different hats that you can assign things to. But a lot of medium-sized businesses may have one or a few people who are splitting up that responsibility within the company. So they're basically playing a role when they need to, and it's more challenging because those people, they have other jobs and they have other responsibilities within the company. So adding that on to the work that they're already doing, I think can be a challenge, especially if they weren't accustomed to working in or complying with data privacy or data protection regulations.
Yeah, and it's a real problem in my perspective. What we are telling them is to create committees, actually. because there is no one person who understands law, IT, and a data protection officer have three hats. He has to know about how organizations are administered, administrative knowledge. He has to know about IT, information technologies work and processes data, and she has to know about the legal structure and law actually. So small and medium-sized organizations do not have people like that. So what we say is, since you are the ones who are processing the data, the different departments, just create a committee from these mid-level managers or something. So try to deal with in a more collective way. Because what other solutions do they have? They don't have the resources to hire a separate data protection officer. That's the reality.
Yeah. What is happening in the world right now related to privacy or data protection that concerns you?
AI, the artificial intelligence, it changed everything actually. Even think about if GDPR is relevant or not in this matter. You know, we have privacy laws, and it's also the same for the intellectual property rights. So it destroyed every foundation that our legal systems are built upon. Having right to something, ownership. So I own my data, I own my production or intellectual properties. So the concept of property is even now under discussion actually. There are solutions, by the way. For example, you know, the discussion about the painters or the draw artists whose works are fed to the AI, and the AI produces new pictures. I use it happily, and every one of us use it. But in the end, it's actually a collection of intellectual property rights, the new product. So who owns it? Who is the owner of the new product? And how are you going to compensate the work of the previous human? It's an incredibly complex problem, actually. So although we have European Union just introduced a new AI Act, and you are seeing it daily on LinkedIn, everyone is writing reports, writing guidelines, preparing new regulations and new bills or other things. And yeah, the whole world is now on its feet trying to solve the problem. But problem is much deeper than what we think actually, how we approach. The main problem is how we are going to approach this new entity, the artificial intelligence. In my view, we are thinking about is like our traditional algorithmic computing systems. It is not. In our algorithmic mathematical approach, we upload the data to a database, which is similar to an Excel for people, SQL, you know. So you can query, change, delete, or do everything, and the data is there, unquestionably. You can reach it and you can find it anywhere. But here, the thing merges everything, and you cannot discern which data was produced by whom, and it becomes a giant mess actually. So it resembles actually ourselves, you know. We don't have Excel sheets in our brains, do we? So the information comes in different ways. We listen to things, for example, podcasts. We read things, we discuss things. So it's a mess actually, how we learn and how we process data and how we produce. I think it's a wrong approach to think this if it is a traditional algorithmic mathematical, and it's not. And the main discussion is about the ethics, the bias of, for example, the artificial intelligence, Gen and AI. Yeah, we feed it with our knowledge and we expect it to be unbiased. You see, in a traditional computing way, it's easy actually. You create another layer to filter the data and it's over. But not in this case. So it's a completely huge problem and don't know how we are going to solve it. And lately, the scientists managed to read our thoughts. Have you heard about it?
I have heard that one. Oh my goodness.
We are digitizing ourselves deep down to our thoughts, actually. And which means we can be read by the computers and we can be assessed by the computing systems, including now generative AI, to our very private thoughts. So this is a new brave word, and I think we are taking it lightly. I think this is as big as the Jesus, you know. It's a new age actually, and it's a start of a new history. But it's under discussion. Yeah, we have to discuss this, and nobody has a solution. I don't think so. And the new laws, Yes, I think they are very good, and we have to do this because as a human societies, we don't have anything but to regulate. This is the most comprehensive tool that we created in 5,000 years or something. First, it was introduced in Hammurabi, yes, the Babylonian king. Now we love to regulate. We have to regulate because we don't have any other choice. But how are we going to regulate this new thing? This is a completely new phenomenon, and it's exciting.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful subject, but it's a problem at the same time.
it is. I agree. I hadn't heard anyone say it that way, and you're right. It is a new age, isn't it? So it's before AI and after AI, before the democratization of AI. That's what happened.
Before the marketization of AI, we had AI, but we didn't know it actually.
Right.
They called machine learning, and they were doing lab tests for the last 8 or 10 years after they solved how they cracked the code, how humans think actually and learn. That's the main thing actually. It mimics us. It learns like us and it thinks like us. And after marketization, I was shocked. And who doesn't use ChatGPT? I am using it daily. And it comes with its problems and the questions. If I am consultant and trying to solve problems for my consultees, and I'm loading their data onto a completely different company's not database, but some kind of data mine, what would you call it? So yes, we have ethical problems, and sometimes I was thinking about, okay, everybody is writing emails using AI.
Absolutely.
Email companies integrated AI, generative AI into their products. So let me ask you a question. Who is talking to who now? Think about this. I'm writing an email. I'm not writing an email. ChatGPT writes it, okay? Then I'm sending it to you. And for example, you are replying, but how are you replying? You are making the ChatGPT write the answer. So are we the ones who are talking or ChatGPT is talking to itself? These are incredible questions, actually.
Oh my goodness. I hadn't thought about that. That's so true. And I think to me it's really interesting because when generative AI or Chat GPT and all these new AI tools became more commonplace, you're right that a lot of companies, and they still are, implementing generative AI and AI into their products. Almost any tool that you use today, you open it up, they say, hey, we have this new feature. You can do X, Y, and Z, this new thing. And I think for people who were afraid of AI, they wanted to shut the door on it and not use it. It's impossible because it's in everything now.
Impossible. What was the first social media application before Facebook? What
Was it MySpace?
MySpace? Yeah. Okay. In 2003, for example, we ever thought about there will be a world like it's today?
No.
You see, we all meet on LinkedIn, actually, isn't it, Debbie? Our socializing now is carried out to social media, and in 2003 it was a science fiction actually, but it's a reality. So I think we are currently not understanding how will this change our world. This is MySpace time for us regarding to AI, and it will be a very different world. And there comes the question of authenticity, actually. I cannot make calculations because I have calculated. Once upon a time, we memorized telephone numbers.
Right.
Do we? No, no, I don't know. It is changing us at the same time. As big so, and privacy, think about in this new world, the new age, the subject of privacy, for example. So I was reading about LinkedIn is a great place as a social media. You can find any sort of research, reports, guidelines. And yeah, I thank for them for this service. And there was a research about synthetic data, for example. Since you do not want to feed the artificial intelligence with real people's data, what they do is they synthesize it. They create a synthetic version which do not resemble real people. Unidentifiable, they say, something like anonymization. So these researchers quickly solved, they talk with AI. So this is also a completely new, we are talking to the computer currently. They talk it and they get the real people's data who were supposed to be synthesized and unreadable. So Where is our solutions? How are we going to protect privacy, let's say? It's a brainy world. I read an article again about data poisoning. Data poisoning, wonderful. Yeah, for people, I love to learn, and this is incredibly exciting for me. But on the social level and the legal level, there is a lot to be solved and first analyzed. So it's a brainy world. And I don't think AI Act of European Union is just a start, not direct solution.
I agree. I agree. I think you're right. We're moving into a new frontier where we don't really comprehend exactly how AI is going to change so much of what we do. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how people react to that in regulation. I know that when the European Union said they were doing the AI Act, people were really happy and excited. And I think some people breathe a sigh of relief. They're like, oh, wow, now we're going to have an AI regulation. That's great. But the thing that's going to happen with technology, well, first of all, no matter what, technology always outpaces law, right? So law tends to be very reactive. But what's going to happen with AI now is that it's going to go way ahead, right? It's going to exponentially grow. So it's going to go light years ahead of where things are now. There's a place, obviously, for regulation, but regulation won't be sufficient to manage what's happening with AI.
You remember when European Union's AI Act was introduced? It was before generative AI. They had no idea there will be a generative AI thing, entity coming, and it's a nuclear bomb actually. It's changing every day. And we are learning about new things. And yes, regulations, instead of depending on the regulations, I think we need to discuss a lot. Discussions are our first line of defense, let's say, to regulate this thing. And because otherwise we will be overwhelmed and we won't be able to handle it.
So, if it were the world according to you, Mila, what would be your wish for privacy or data protection anywhere in the world, whether that be regulation, human behavior, or technology?
It will be AI solutions that makes privacy compliance seamless for small and medium-sized organizations and for the person whose data is protected, like me and you. You know, cookie consent pop-ups and privacy notices, actually. Do you think anybody reads them? 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000. So
Right.
these traditional approaches is not working actually. Yeah, okay, it looks glamorous and wonderful. Okay, we have notifications, we have data transfer agreements, we are collecting consent, but now consent is an actually torture for the user. They are regularly consenting, and it has turned into an automatic thing actually, because the user wants to get to the content quickly, and you are avoiding him to access the content. So what is that? Does he read the cookie privacy policy? No, it just says, yes, I consent. So, yeah, it's good. I'm not saying that they are not useless, but there's a greater thing that, as you say, technology is running in the speed of light, and we are regulating in the speed of a horse, maybe. If anybody, AI programmer, can solve this privacy thing, make it a seamless process that AI helps us handle it, interesting. And this is what I expect from the new age, actually. And this new entity that we call artificial intelligence.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I love your insights, and I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. And I know the audience will love the episode as much as I have. So this is great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you for hosting me. Hope to discuss it further in the future. Endless discussions.
Yeah, endless discussions. Well, thank you so much, and look forward to being in touch with you soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.